man, that is beautiful. I never get tired of watching that. Ever. Today, I'm going to show you how I made the Balatro title sequence in Davinci Resolve. I'm going to show you exactly what I did and how I did it so you can follow along. And let me be clear, this is a huge effect with a ton of working parts. So by the time this video is done, you'll have a ton of really cool tech that you can use for other assets, and you'll know exactly how to make this for yourself. The way I'm going to structure this video is as follows. We're going to go through the entire thing together and break down each piece one by one. All right, so just like with everything that we emulate on this channel, the very first thing we do is get a reference so that we can see each individual detail and even go through it frame by frame if we need to. So let's take a look here. We can see right off the bat, we've got a solid background. We have a card that seems to have this kind of buoyancy to it. The card then dissolves with this bit of pixelation here, and we can see we have some particles that are floating out from the card as well. And as the card dissolves, there's a little ball of light that grows the more it dissolves. And then of course we've got a ton of cards that seem to be kind of flying in like a circular vortex, and the solid background itself seems to kind of melt away or fade away to this textured kind of 3D swirling blue and gray background. We then get consumed by the ball of light. We have a card materialize in. We get a new textured background, and then we get our text along with our menu that seems to kind of just pop in there. So like I said before, there are so many moving parts in this, from the card's buoyancy, its dissolving, the particles, the ball of light, the background that shifts. We've got all the cards. And as you saw in our reference, we managed to make something that looks basically like a one-to-one recreation. All right, so we're in the Fusion page, and we're going to take a quick look at the beginning of our reference to break down exactly how we think background 1 is made. So we can see right off the bat, we have, of course, a solid background. As our card dissolves, right, we're ignoring all the card stuff right now. We're just looking at the background, and we can see from the center, we have this kind of oval shape that the background dissolves from, and it continues to dissolve and become more circular than oval. And then slowly, as the blue reaches the edges, the center of the background turns gray. And let's not forget that the entire background itself is this insane kind of swirling liquidy vortex that just kind of pulls you in. So how do we want to make this? Right from the get-go, if you have no idea what you're doing, the best thing to do is start off with the basics, which in our case are the two colors that we see here. So just by taking a background node, I changed the type from solid to gradient, then I changed the gradient type from linear to radial. And a radial gradient means that the color change is going to take place from the center and then slowly fade into whatever other color you have the further out from the center it gets. And because we have a color change over time, what I've done is I've animated the two different colors that we have so that they actually move along using keyframes. And then we've also animated our offset as well. And the offset changes the area of effect of our gradient. So as I'm increasing the value of our offset, it's kind of like a transform size control where it just makes it bigger. So there's our color. After that, I connected it to a transform node because I wanted to make it a little bit bigger. And this is where the fun part comes in, because as you can see, the colors that we have here are not solid. We have dark and light blues, we have dark and light grays. And while you could try to do this in 2D space, it would be very, very difficult, because look at the design that we have right here, the designs that we have here. That's not something you're going to be able to create easily without wasting a ton of time and making your effect really, really clunky and cluttered. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to take our 2D object that we have here, which is just a sheet of two colors, right? A simple background node, and we're going to make it 3D. And the reason we're going to make it 3D is because if it's a 3D object, we can add reflection data to it. And the reflection data makes it so that when we shine a light onto our then 3D texture, it will automatically create these light and dark areas that we have here. So it completely gets rid of the need for you to create anything to be super, super manual or insanely custom. You can just generate it by making your stuff 3D. And the way we're going to do that is by plugging our transform into a Cook Torrents node, and using the Cook Torrents node, you can dial in your 3D reflection data. You can use middle mouse button to kind of move the light around to see exactly how the light and dark areas are going to be affected. After that, we're going to plug our Cook Torrents into a shape 3D, and we want to make sure that our shape 3D is a plane, because our 2D image here is flat and we don't want a cube or a sphere or anything like that. And to add the actual rotation, that full swirling motion to our 3D texture, we're going to go to our shape 3D and we're going to go into the rotation tab. From there, we're going to add on the simple expression, which is time multiplied by -0.1. And what this will do is take the frame value and slowly increase it over time. Now, if you don't know how to make this little text bar appear, it's very, very simple. Just going to right click on any property. You're going to go down to the bottom of this menu here, and you're going to click expression. And there you go. Remove an expression. You can right click again and just click remove expression. So now that we have our 3D object and it has our reflection data baked into it, what we need to do is warp it so that when we light it, not only will it have proper reflections, but it will also accentuate or emphasize those light and dark areas. And we're going to do that by using a node called Displace 3D. Now, normally, if you plug a shape into a Displace 3D, nothing's going to happen. And that's because a Displace 3D can't do anything on its own. It needs two elements. The first one is the actual shape that it's going to warp. And the second is the information that you give it that tells it how to warp that 3D object. And because the design that we have here is a little bit of like a spiral or a vortex, we're going to take a fast noise node, which if you haven't used a fast noise node before, it is probably one of, if not the most versatile node in Davinci Resolve. You can use it to make smoke, you can use it to make fire, lava, you can use it to make water, you can use it to make so many insane things. You can use it to make blood, you can use it to make this 3D texture right here. And that is what we're doing. So yeah, fast noise, definitely a node we're going to dive into another day. But for now, after we've made some adjustments here, we're just going to go into our color tab. We're going to make sure we're set to 2 color instead of gradient. We're going to make sure the alpha settings for our black color is pulled all the way down so that it's transparent. After that, we're going to plug our fast noise node into a vortex node, and we're going to adjust our settings so that we can create this swirl pattern that we kind of see in our reference. And these two nodes are going to serve as our displacement data for our Displace 3D. So let's plug that into our Displace 3D and throw that into our viewer. And you can see big difference right away, right? Here's our shape 3D. Here's our Displace 3D. We're already seeing with just some of the artificial lighting that Resolve adds. And you can enable the artificial lighting just by adding lights and shadows here. So if I go to just lights, or I go to just solid, right, we'll have that warping, but we won't have any lighting on it. So I'm going to shadows so we can see kind of a preview version of what this will end up looking like. Now from our Displace 3D, we want to plug this into a Merge 3D, and you'll notice big difference right away. This is because we've actually begun to light our 3D object, and we've done that with two things. We've done it with a spotlight, and we've done it with a point light. I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like right now. So let's plug our merge into a render 3D and throw that into our viewer. Now I'll disconnect our spotlight and our point light. One thing we want to do is make sure our renderer type is set to hardware render. And we want to make sure we have both lighting and shadows checked off, because if we don't, we're just going to end up with something that looks very, very flat. So with our point light plugged in, we're actually lighting our 3D object from the back. And this is just going to add some additional lighting. It's going to help us with the really, really bright points that we want to emphasize. And with just our spotlight, you can see we're lighting the whole thing, but our bright points are not as bright. And we do end up with some really, really dark points. Now, the lighting itself is a stylistic choice, which means if you don't want to light it from the back, you don't have to. But with our spotlight and our point light plugged in, you can see we brighten up some of these areas, and our dark parts before now are bright. So bada bing, bada boom. Now it's time for us to add some finishing touches, and I wanted to make the colors a little bit more punchy. So using a color corrector node, we just bump up our gain and we bring our lift and gamma down. There's our before and after. Really really blows out the highlights, but that is kind of what we want when you look here and you look here. After that, I added on a soften and sharpen node, and you can tell that this is a minor detail, something that, again, you don't have to do, but something that I wanted to do. And then I decided to actually size this back down just a little bit before cropping into a 1920 by 1080 canvas, which is going to be the same size as our reference here. And you can see this is looking pretty good. Our animated background that we have over here is doing a wonderful job of keeping up with the background spread in the reference that we slowly get. And so now it's time to add the one final touch that we need right at the beginning, which is this solid background here. The way we're going to do that is just by grabbing a simple background node, and we can just pick screen color, grab that, boom, easy peasy. And we're going to go right up to the part where the background begins to fade in. Then we're going to take an ellipse node, which you can just grab from up here, and we're going to plug that into our backgrounds. Now for my ellipse, I made sure to have checked off both solid and invert so that we would only be affecting the area inside of the ellipse. And then all we're going to do is slowly size up our ellipse with some gentle feathering to match roughly the size of our reference here. So you can see as it becomes more circular, we make our ellipse more circular as well until we reach the very end and we don't need it anymore. Now, obviously, this isn't where we're going to leave things because our ellipse is a perfect oval, while the example that we have right here is extremely warped. We've even got a little piece of the background right over here popping in. And what we can do to mimic the warp that we have in our reference is plug our background into, this time, a normal displace node, not a displace 3D. We're going for just the normal displace today. And then we're going to get another fast noise node. We're going to pump up our contrast a whole bunch and plug that into the foreground of our displace. And so here's our before, and now here is our after. So as we expand our ellipse size, you see we get that same warped effect that we have in our reference. So let's merge this over top of our background and see what our media out looks like. And it's looking pretty darn good to me. Right, then we even have the gray coming in. Bang, bang, boom. The first part of our Balatro title sequence, background 1, is officially done. Let's move on to the next part. All right, the next part of our glorious fusion composition here is the card itself. And we're going to speed through a ton of different parts here. So pay attention because this is where things really begin to ramp up. So after the card animates in, we can see we have this kind of buoyancy before the card begins to deteriorate, and as it begins to deteriorate, we notice we end up with these kind of particles here before the entire thing just kind of fades away. So we've got 3 different parts. We have the card actually deteriorating. We have the decay rate of the card. So that's number 1. We have the particles that the card emits as it decays, and then we have the buoyancy properties that the card has where it just kind of floats around and rotates throughout the entire thing. Along with that, I'm also going to show you how I designed this custom card here so you can make one for yourself. What we're doing here is we are taking a black background, and I've made my background size 1520 by 2160. Now, this is much, much bigger, obviously, than 1920 by 1080, but it's always good to have a higher resolution asset that you can size down instead of having something that's too small that you need to zoom into. So we take our background, we're going to throw a rectangle mask on it, and we're just going to round off those edges to give it the exact shape of the card. After that, we're going to take our channel color, which is yellow, and we're going to plug that in on top of our card. Now, the whole thing should be yellow, and that's because we have not yet plugged in a rectangle mask to the mask input of our merge. Once we do that, we're going to uncheck solid if you have it checked, because otherwise you're going to end up with something like this. Now, obviously you can do something like that, pure design choice, and then we're going to drag our border width up just a little bit to get this nice yellow inner border. After that, I'm taking the channel logo. We're going to slap that right on top of our card, and I've also added one additional mask just in case I decide to move the logo around. It won't be overlaid on top of the card itself. So that is how we made our card design. Now, the nodes that make up the entire decay effect spread out across here. And although this looks really complicated, I promise it's not. Let's break it down step by step right now. So basically what we're doing with our card is we're masking out a piece of it and just slowly having that mask grow over time to give the illusion or give the effect that the card is being destroyed or slowly decaying away over time. Then we're just multiplying that effect into several different spots, make it look like the card is decaying from several different spots. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that when we look at our card reference, it's not just a normal dissolve effect. We actually have this general kind of pixelation that you're seeing instead of just a clean circle. And so to preserve the style of the original game, we are going to mimic this same pixelation style of Decay in our own composition. The first thing we did was get a fast noise node and pump up our contrast all the way to maximum. Then in the color page, we changed our color type from 2-color to gradient, and we changed our gradient type to radial. Now for the actual color distribution, we used black and white, and we brought our white all the way down in close to the black. And you see if I adjust it, we end up feathering out the transition between our black and now, because we're trying to get this decay area to be roughly the same size as it is in our reference, we're bringing the full gradient area down to this size. After that, you can see we've animated our offset to slowly move from a lower value to a higher value. And what this does is it increases the area of effect that the gradient has and allows us to create decay area that expands over time. Now, obviously, this does not look like our reference. So what we need to do in order to pixelate this is to attach our fast noise to a mosaic blur. And you can see instantly we've gone from a smooth curve around our edges to this rough pixelated look. After that, we plugged our mosaic blur into an erode dilate to give us a little bit of extra control over our area of effect. Then we're going to merge everything all together, merging our card over top of a transparent background and then connecting our fast noise, mosaic blur, and erode dilate into the mask input of our merge node. And you can already see, because we're partway through the animation, we have a decaying area. And it's looking pretty good so far, but in order to get this decayed ring that we see in our reference, instead of just having a typical kind of black hole decay, what we're going to do is copy this entire effect and move it over to right here. After that, we simply merge this whole copy on top of our original, and when we play it back, you can see we end up getting that nice ring that we have in our reference. Now, the difference with the copy compared to the original is that if I go into the fast noise and we go into our color tab here, I want you to take a look at the offset and notice that we're actually starting from a higher value and we're going down to a lower value. And this is decreasing the area of effect of our gradient, allowing us to create this little bit in the center that stays while the rest of the ring continues to expand and decay. After that, it's just rinse and repeat. Keep on making as many copies as you would like and adjusting the position of your gradient to make as many little decaying areas as you want. Two more crucial pieces of information that you need is to make sure that for every copy of the effect that you have, make sure that your card design always finds its way into the foreground input of the merge. One other crucial piece of information that you need to know in order to pull off this effect successfully is to make sure that after the first ring that you make, each next version of the effect that you add on will need its merge operator mode set to in instead of being set to over like how it normally is. And the reason for this is that when I have a copy of this decay effect and I have a copy of this decay effect, if I merge the second on top of the first with my operator mode set to over, Fusion thinks that I want to take two copies of the card and merge them over each other. And the problem with that is that with this copy, you can see obviously down here, there is nothing decaying. And with this copy, up here, there's nothing decaying. So essentially, they end up filling in each other's gaps, which we do not want. So we change the operator mode in so that they are now interacting with each other instead of just copying over top of each other. And that is how we make the card dissolve effect. Next, let's move on to the buoyancy. And the buoyancy is really easy, really straightforward. We're just going to take our card that we have here that is now dissolving. We're going to take all of this information and we're going to plug that into an image plane 3D. You can see right here, even in 3D, our card is still dissolving, so we've got our node order correct. After that, we want to plug our image plane 3D into a transform 3D. Now, the reason we're using a transform 3D is so that we have our buoyancy effect isolated from everything else, so that if we want to copy the properties over to something else, it's really easy. All we have to do is copy the node and paste it somewhere else. So with our transform 3D selected, we're going to move our Z pivot point. And the reason that we're doing this is because we don't just want the card to be rotating, we actually want it to move off center ever so slightly. And I'll demonstrate for you right now that if I am to change my Y rotation while my Z pivot is off, you can see the card is actually rotating around the pivot point. Whereas if I leave my Z pivot directly inside of the card simply spins. And that is why we are leaving our pivot point just off center of our card. Next, we go into our rotation area here, and we're going to right click on each property, go to the modify with tab, and then add on the perturb mod. Now you're going to do that for each one. And when you go to the modifiers tab, you'll see that you have 3 individual perturb modifiers, and a perturb modifier kind of acts as almost a random value generator where it will constantly be changing a value seemingly without any rhyme or reason. And this can be really useful if you want to have some kind of procedural shake effect, or you just want something to seem like it's moving randomly. You can adjust the settings for each property, and you can even change the original value that you want these changes down here to reference. And if you don't like the kind of motion that you're getting, you can click on the reseed button, and it will give you a completely new set of randomly generated. Now that we have our actual buoyancy effect set up, we're going to merge this together with an ambient light, and you can see the difference here with the transform versus the merge. We're going to put this into a render 3D, making sure that we have both lighting and shadows enabled. Otherwise, you're not going to get to see the effect of your composition. And then we're going to plug all of that into a transform node so we can size the card down to fit our reference. And just like that, you have made not only the card dissolve effect, but you've also made the buoyancy as well. Now, moving on to the particles. When we look at our reference, we can see that not only are all of the particles square, they're moving in all different directions, and they are only emanating from the region where the card is. Now, the way that we are going to recreate this is by taking our same card design that we have over here. We're going to paste it into a transform so that it ends up with the same kind of positioning and size that we have in our reference. We're going to merge that over top of a transparent background so that it is on same canvas size. Then we're going to add a P emitter. Now, a P emitter is short for particle emitter. And in our particle emitter, the first thing we want to do is go to our region tab, and we're going to change the type from all to bitmap. And changing this to bitmap will allow us to control where exactly the particles emanate from. Then we can just plug our merge into our particle emitter, and now we know that all of the particles we generate are going to be coming right from our card area. After that, we go into our style tab, we change our style to brush, we change our brush to a 4-sided star, which, as you can see, ends up giving us the shape of a square. Then we make some quick adjustments to our fade controls so the particles aren't just winking in and out of existence. And then in our main control tab here, we want to add a little bit of velocity and velocity variance to our particles, so they're all moving and they also have slightly different speed between each other. Then we're going to add 360 degrees of angle variance, so our particles can move in all different directions. After that, it's a simple matter of actually keyframing when you want your particles to appear and disappear. Then we can throw that into a P-render, a renderer 3D, and we can merge it underneath of our actual card itself, so that when we play our effect through, particles are coming only from the area where the card is, and they're moving in all different directions. Now it's time for us to add a couple finishing touches, and the way we're going to do that is by connecting our merge into a nice soft glow, which you can see adds a nice little soft glow to our card. We're going to plug our soft glow into a transform node, and that is what's going to allow us to animate our card in, match our reference. And last but not least, we're going to add some lighting so that our card can mimic the same properties that our reference has when the ball of light appears. So we're going to get our background, we're going to throw an ellipse on top, and as our ball of light grows, so does our ellipse. Then we're going to merge our ball of light on top of our card, and we're going to make sure that we also plug our transforms output into our merges mask input. And the reason that we do this is so that only the card is affected by the ball of light and nothing underneath it is being affected. So when we disconnect this, you can see that underneath the card, our background is also being affected, which we don't want. We only want our lighting to affect the card. So we're going to make sure that we have our transform plugged into both the background and mask input of our merge. And there you have it. We just learned how to make the actual design for our card, how to make the decay effect from our reference, how to mimic the buoyancy, add particles, and we even added some finishing touches. And if you guys are getting value from this video and you want to access the exact project files that we use right here for yourself, let me know in the comments below. I'm thinking of adding some extra perks for viewers who want to support the channel, things like access to project files from every video, giving special privileges like voting on what the next videos will be, and even doing things like exclusive member streams where I make effects in real time requested by you guys. So let me know in the comments below if that's something you're interested in, and without further ado, let's move on. The next thing we're going to be covering is our card Vortex, and if you take a look here, you can see exactly what we've got in comparison to our reference. You can see we have a whole bunch of cards with the Davinci Resolve logo on them. And I'm going to show you exactly how we were able to recreate this design. Then we're going to jump right into how the card Vortex is made and how we sold the effect by adding some special touches at the end. Now, everyone knows this is what the Davinci Resolve logo looks like. Along the edges, you have this really nice gradient, and on the inside, you've got your 3 flower petals that are influenced by the gradient's exterior. So in order to recreate this, we are going to actually need 2 different versions of this gradient. We're going to need a square version so that we can make the petals, and then we're going to need a rectangular version for the actual card border. And the way that we do this is really simple. With another square background, we're going to simply add on another background over top. We're going to change our type to a linear gradient, and all we're going to do is simply select the colors that we have going from end to end, and we're going to fade them into one another. So here we have the top going left to right, we have the right side going top to bottom, we have the left side going top to bottom, then we have the bottom going left to right. In the center here as well, you can see everything kind of lights up a little bit, so we even have a white gradient in the center. And when we merge all of these into each other, you can see we end up with this really nice colorful gradient that mimics the same colors that we have for our Resolve logo. And the way that we feathered all of these into each other was very easy. We just grabbed a bunch of rectangle masks and then brought our soft edge up all the way. So after you merge all of these together, then you need to cut out the actual petals. And the way we did that was really, really easy. We just grabbed a B-spline, which you can find right here, and we traced around our 3 petals. We then merged them into one another, all of them into a transform, which we can use to change the size and position of all 3 petals together. Then we took our gradients, merged them over top of a transparent background, and then added our masks into the mask input of our merge. Then we size everything down with another transform node, and we give it some extra punch with a color corrector node and give it a little bit more of a glow with a soft glow node. After that, we wanted to create another gradient, but this time a rectangle gradient using the same colors. So we just followed the exact same principle using the same resolution that we have for our original card design, and we just continued to copy all of the previous gradients that we have from here. Bam, just like that, we have our rectangular gradient. And we did the same thing with our rectangle mask that we did in the other card design, where we just brought our border width up a little bit and made sure that we had solid unchecked. And that creates our nice rectangular gradient that we have right here. Then we merge them over top of each other, making sure that our petals are on top of our card. And there you have it. That is our card design for our card vortex. Now we can really get into the fun stuff. So we're going to merge our card design over top of a transparent background with our reference resolution, which is 1920 by 1080. After that, we plugged our card into a transform node and we rotated it just a little bit and then sized it down. And this isn't important right now. I'm going to show you exactly why we did this later on. Next, we got another P emitter node, and instead of changing the region to bitmap, we're going to change the style bitmap. And the difference between changing your region and style bitmaps is region controls where the particles emanate from, and style controls what shape the particles actually are. So for our region, instead of changing it to bitmap, we actually changed it to cube, and then we basically just made it a flat line. Then we changed our Z rotation to 90 degrees to keep our cards from being like this, because we want a flat sheet of particles instead of whatever that was. Then in style, we made a couple changes, just like we did with our decay particles from our decay effect. One of the things to note is the size over life. And because in our reference, the cards actually get smaller the longer they're on the screen, we want our cards to also get smaller the further that they get. Then in our controls tab, there's a few more things we had to do here. One of them was add a little bit of velocity to our cards. We also changed our Z angle to -90 so that our cards were not moving on a crazy degree like this. Then we changed both our Y and Z rotation so that we could get the cards mostly flat, because if we have everything set to its default, you end up with a bunch of cards looking like this. And for our purposes, we need everything laying flat down, and you are about to see why. Next, we add a P directional force to our cards to help them along, continuously pushing them in one direction. Then we throw everything into a P render node, and now this is where the magic happens. We're going to throw our P render node into a Bender 3D, and you can see we've managed to take our sheet of particles and turn it into a tube of particles. And this is the exact reason we wanted to add a little bit of rotation to our cards to make them almost flat, but not quite, because this is what happens when we have them completely flat. We end up with something like this. One other setting we changed was to make sure that our rotation mode was set to rotation relative to motion instead of setting it to absolute rotation, which also does us zero favors. So after we have our particles connected to the Bender 3D, we're actually going to want a second Bender 3D node, as opposed to just our first one where we have it taking our sheet of particles and turning it into a tube. Our second Bender 3D node, we're using to pinch the end of that tube and widen up the end that's closer to us, creating that kind of cone or vortex visual. Then we take our tube and we're going to plug that into a transform 3D to make some adjustments, and we're going to plug that transform 3D into one more transform 3D, which we're then going to use to animate the rotation of our particle tube. And this is where the transform angle comes into play, because if I set our transform angle to 0, you're going to see all of the particles no longer face the direction that they are moving. We also ended up changing the flip property so that we could have the cards going headfirst into the vortex as opposed to going feet first into the vortex. So after that, we want to plug our transform 3D into a merge 3D, where we're going to add a camera and an ambient light, and we're going to use our camera to really get a proper view of our cards, and we're going to make sure that our camera view actually cuts off where the cards begin, because we want the cards to come on the screen already moving and already rotating. Then we move the entire composition into a render 3D, and this is what we end up with. Not bad at all. But there's still a few things that we can do more to really help sell effect. And the first one is to connect our render 3D to a dent node. What that dent node is going to do is pinch the end of the cone here to really pull our cards directly into the center of the vortex the further they get away. After that, we plug our dent node into a vortex node, and this is going to help us stretch out the cards that are close to us on the edges of the screen. Now, you can tell right off the bat that our vortex node seems to be warping some of our cards up here and over here, and we're going to fix that by taking our vortex and plugging it into a displace node. And I do want to clarify, this is not a displace 3D, this is just a normal displace. And the way that we're going to displace it is by taking a simple white background that we have here, and we're going to plug an ellipse into our background, making sure we have both solid and invert checked off. We're going to bring our feathering up, and then we're going to plug both of these into an erode dilate node, that we have a little bit of extra control over our border. And now you're about to see a crazy difference between our vortex without displace and our vortex with the displace, where now the majority of our stretching is being put just off of the screen. And to make up for that last little bit, we can plug everything into a transform node and just size it up a little bit. And that takes us from here to here, where we have just that little bit of extra pull from the edges, along with the stretch, and a little bit of extra bend as we get towards the center. Last but not least, the ball of light is going to make one more appearance. So you guys know the drill by now. We're going to get a transparent background. We're going to merge our cards on top. Then to make our ball of light, we're going to have another background with a softened ellipse, and we're just going to animate the size as the ball of light itself grows in our reference. Then we're going to merge our ball of light on top of our cards, and we're going to make sure that our cards are plugged into both merges background input as well as the mask input, so that the ball of light is only affecting the cards and not the rest of the position. One last thing you can do to dial in the exact amount that you want the ball of light to affect your cards is adjust the blend mode here on your merge, so that if you want it to basically be blinding to your cards, you can put it all the way up to 1. If you want it to barely be affecting them, you can put it down do something like 0.2 or 0.3. And just like that, we have learned how to make our card vortex. We started off with the actual card design, which we used a combination of gradients and masks to create. We then plugged everything into a transparent background, gave it a bit of a rotate and a shift. Then we plugged the entire thing into a P emitter, added a little bit of extra push with a P direction, bent it twice. The first time, make it into this wonderful tube that we have. The second time to actually pinch the ends of it, making it a cone shape. Then we made a adjustment in our 3D space, gave it some rotation, and then added on our finishing touches with a little bit of lighting. All right, and now the moment you've all been waiting for, the ball of light itself. All right, we've done so much talking about the ball of light. Let's actually make the ball of light. And this is really, really easy. It's just a simple white background with an ellipse thrown over it. And then of course, our ellipse is animated in both its size and its soft edge to mimic the exact same shape and growth speed that our reference has. And then just to add a little bit more feathering, I actually plugged our background into a glow node to change our feathering just a little bit. So we still have that nice feather, but we also have a bit more of a solid shape here. And then just like with most of the effects that I do, I merge this on top of a transparent background. The reason that I do this is so that I can add the black back in and see exactly what my area of effect is. So there's our ball of light. The next thing that we did was create our card materialization effect. And the way we did this was very, very easy. You might notice it looks eerily similar to the decay effect that we made earlier in the video. And that's because it's the exact same effect, but what we've done here to get the card materialize effect is we just took our Davinci card design that we made, did the exact same thing where we plugged it into the image plane, we added our render, we added our soft glow. This time we're not including the particles. And then when we rendered the effect out in the edit page, we just went into our retiming controls and hit reverse speed. And you can actually go into your retime controls by right-clicking on your clip and hitting change clip speed. And bada bing, bada boom, we got ourselves a different sized card. And then to actually make it this size, we just change the zoom down and then we bring the position down as well. There you go. Easy peasy. All right, we've got 3 things left to cover. The first is the actual Davinci text that you see here. The second is the game menu, which you can see we've modified to show our channel name, the actual names of the most used pages in Davinci Resolve, and then we've also got the little YouTube join button. And of course, the last but not the least is our beautiful, vibrant second version of our background. So let's start off with the Davinci text. Now, when we look at our reference right here, and we see the word Balatro, to create this custom in Davinci Resolve with the same kind of bevel border, the same beveling that we have here, and the same color scheme going across. Now, I knew if I attempted to create this text myself, we were going to extend the length of this video by another 30 minutes. So what I did instead is I grabbed a screenshot of this, threw it into ChatGPT and asked it, hey, can you mimic this style, but instead of the word Balatro, can you do the word Davinci? And what we ended up getting was this, which is Davincan. So it's almost there, but you know what? All things considered, not bad. And for those of you wondering, do I have some kind of subscription? You can do this with the completely free version, whatever that is. And now you have a canvas image that you can use. Now, even though the text itself was generated for us, there still is a lot of work left to be done here. You'll notice that we have an N where the I is supposed to be, and the space between the D and the V where the A is not nearly large enough to fit the card that we have in our final product here. So what we ended up doing was completely masking out every single letter. We made a copy of the I as well. And then even with our drop shadows, you'll notice that the drop shadows are not completely black. And so we can't mask out the drop shadows for each letter. We are going to need to create our own. And how are we going to mask out each letter? By literally getting a B-spline, which you can find over here, and then masking out each individual letter that we want. So first we made the drop shadows by simply masking out one of the letters. We used the transform to adjust the placement, then plug that into a color corrector where we brought the gain all the way down. And this is just a small personal touch. I wanted to add a slight blur to the edges to feather it a little bit more. Then we added one more transform to move it to the edges of where our composition would be. And that's going to play into the overall arrangement of the letters. Then We plug all of this into an erode dilate node so that we can buff that border out a little. Then as we begin to combine these letters, we get the shadow of Davinci. Getting the actual letters themselves was much easier. No need to create any kind of shadow or add in an erode dilate. We just had to mask out the letters themselves. Then we move all of that over, merge it on top of our drop shadow, and then move the entire thing over so that all of it fits properly on the screen. And bam, just like that, we have our Davinci text with our card Materialize. All right, next, the game menu. The game menu was also fairly straightforward. Looking at this node tree, some of you might be going, that does not look straightforward at all. And don't worry, we're gonna break it down. It's actually really easy, just a lot of repetition. So looking at our reference, we can see that all of these panels are made up of the same 4 or 5 elements, where you have your main button here on the top with a drop shadow underneath. Then you have the button and the drop shadow sitting on top of another panel, and one more drop shadow underneath the large panel. So you've got those 4 elements, and then you might have a little bit of text on each panel. And we can see that's consistent for all of the buttons and the panels that they are sitting on, except for our 2 social logos, which are actually much easier, where they don't have a panel that they're sitting on, and it's just them and a drop shadow. So the easiest way we're going to do something like this is with a whole bunch of backgrounds and rectangle masks, where we take a background by itself. We can grab a similar color from our reference source. Then we take a rectangle mask, size that down so it's around the same size. We can adjust our corner radius to give it that same rounded edge. And then you're just going to rinse and repeat with the drop shadow and the panel underneath. And just like that, we have a pretty good emulation of the original. So we combine that with our text, and the text that we ended up using for this, and the font we ended up using to emulate the text is Uda Angle. And I'll add a link in the description for this font so you guys can check it out too. Now, with the text itself, you start off by default with a body, which is always going to be shading element 1, right? So you always start off with your text body. If you go to shading element 3 and you hit enable, that is what's going to add a background shadow, right? That's what's going to add this right here. For our background shadow, we don't want it to be completely black. So we brought our opacity down, and then we also changed our position down here to mimic the same kind of positioning that we have in our reference. And again, we did this across all of our text, across the play button, options, quit, and collection. We did this for each individual piece of text. You can see with all of our panels, it's panel 1, drop shadow, panel 2, drop shadow. Then you add on your text, and there you go. Now, creating these social icons was a little bit different, and that took place in this area right here. You can see, obviously, we have our own version of the Discord logo, and we replaced the X button with a TikTok button. And the way we did that was really straightforward, nothing to it. Oh, and we also got rid of the English, and we put the YouTube join button instead. And now to do the YouTube join button with a drop shadow to match the text's drop shadow, we got the YouTube logo right here, and because we do not want the white part, we luma keyed it out, and we made sure to plug our YouTube logo into both the background and mask input. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a completely black background, which we do not want. Then we did the same thing once more with the luma keyer. Then we plugged that into a color correction, going into all 3 inputs, and we brought our brightness all the way down to create a drop shadow. Then all that's left is to merge these over top of each other, and you have yourself a little YouTube logo with a mini drop shadow. For doing the TikTok logo, it is a similar process. We have a transparent logo, and we're going to plug that directly into our color corrector. We're also going to plug the media into the mask input of the color corrector. And the reason that we're doing that, because we want to change this from black to white. And if we try to do that without having our media plugged into the mask input, we end up with something like this. So we're going to make sure that our media is connected to both inputs for the color corrector. Then we're going to throw our transform onto that, and you'll notice it's disappeared. That's because the 512 by 512 is a different canvas size than 1920 by 1080. But once we merge them together, you can see we've got our TikTok logo and our Discord logo together. Now, the last thing that we have left to create is this little game version graphic up in the top right. This is a little touch that I thought I would add just in the spirit of authenticity. And the way that we're going to mimic this is with a simple text node. The font we are using is Araboto Black, which I will leave a link to down in the description. Once I've got my text, I threw it into an erode dilate node so I could get rid of a little bit of the boldness. After that, we're throwing it into a mosaic blur node to give it some of the same pixelation that we have in our reference. Then we're going to use a transform to shrink it down, and we're going to add on the semi-transparent black background that we have in our reference. And we're going to do that with a simple background node and a rectangle mask. Then once we merge this all together, it completes our game menu. Now all that's left is our last background. Now you'll notice that just like in our first background, we're using the exact same system with our cook torrents, our shape 3D, our displacement information. All of that is going to remain the same. What is changing, however, is the color design that we have in the beginning. So taking a look at our reference, we can see we have the same color gradient as we do in background 1, and all that's taken care of by our 3D system, so we don't need to worry about any gradients, but we do have blue in the center and red on the outside. And because I want to mimic that same pattern, what I'm going to do is grab a fast noise, and I'm going to bring this into our viewer here so you can see exactly what kind of settings we have and what we end up working with. And then I threw an ellipse with some gentle feathering directly in the center, and that's going to make sense to you in just a moment why we're doing that. Next, the fast noise goes into a red gradient background, and it's going to be a radial, just like with some of our other backgrounds. Then we're going to plug our background into a vortex, and the vortex is what's creating the similar pattern that we have in our reference. That's how we're going to get the same kind of swirl texture consistency. Then, because we have blue in the center, I'm going to get a blue radial background. I'm going to size that up just a little bit to match the sizing of our reference. Then I'm going to merge the red background on top of the blue one, and the reason that we have these two ellipses here is to keep the exact center of our composition. After that, I'm going to size the entire thing up, and then just like with background 1, the whole thing goes into a cook torrents node where we can create our reflection data. Then just like with before, that becomes our shape 3D, which we're then going to displace. We're going to light it up. We're going to plug it into our render, throw some color correction on, soften and sharpen, size it down before cropping in, and there you go. And one more thing to make sure that we get the same kind of motion within the swirl, we're going to go to our fast noise that we have for our color design, and we're going to bring our seethe rate up just a little bit, and that's going to work in tandem with the fast noise that you have from your displacement information, along with the same expression that you're using with your shape 3. And with that, we have successfully created the entire Balatro title sequence from beginning to end. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you got a ton of value out of this video. Let me know what you want to see in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.